불어와 흩어진 맘 주스를 틈도
As a photographer, I think that when you're walking through the alleyways, as opposed to, say, in a more touristy cityscape area, the alleyways show you life as it was or even as it is now. So there's a more sense of vibrancy. You get a better feeling of who the Daegu people really are and who they were.
세차게 바람
It's the 칠성상가아 apartments. If you know anything about Korean apartments, these don't exactly look like the big high-rises that you see around the city. Actually, at first glance, I didn't even think that they were apartments. These were, I believe, made in around the 1970s. So they have that sort of style. I would imagine that back in the 70s, this was quite a place to be where you had like all of your shopping and everything right on the first floor and you lived above it. But now a lot of these shops, as you can see behind me, are used for storage and not necessarily shopping goes on here a lot these days. But I think it still is a worthwhile place to take a look at, just simply for the character and the history. So let's go down and take a look further and see what we can find. Now again, one of the things that really sticks out to me are the wires coming in and out of the building. And again, it shows just sort of how old these buildings are and then the era that they were made in. One of the things I noticed here is just with the current condition of the apartments, it's hard to imagine back in the 70s people living here and having the, I'd say almost the convenience of all the stores. But again, it just shows how much of a different era that we live in now compared to back in the 1970s and just how much times have changed. One of the things that really sticks out to me here is that there's a lot of the items that you would find inside of a regular apartment on the outside. So that tells me that there's probably a lot of trust and community here, which contrasts a lot with the modern areas where everyone keeps their things locked inside. So it's kind of refreshing to see how much trust that the neighbors have in each other. I just realized that this area is really sort of like an alley. It's the space in between two buildings, and it's kind of actually really cool because you have the one side with the houses and the other side, so this would be the alleyway here. Very, very interesting. All right, let's go. Okay, so we're here at the Kim Gwang-suk alley, and out of all of the alleys in Daegu, this is probably one of the most famous alleys, but it's contrasts differently than the ones that we visited before. The older alleys that we visited were ones that were in decline, and this alley was in decline, but is now seeing a revitalization thanks to the famous folk singer Kim Gwang-suk. And what's really interesting here is that you can kind of see as we walk along, it's not just the elderly people that grew up listening to his music, but it's a new generation of fans that enjoy this folk sound. So let's take a look further down and see what we can find.
여보 그때를 기억하오.
One of the interesting things that you can see here is that around us there are a lot of young people and old people. And when you think about a traditional market, usually you only think about the older generation. But as a side effect of the revitalization of the Kim Gwang-suk alleyway, it brought in a lot of younger people, especially to places like this in the Pan천시장. Now, one of the interesting things is if you kind of take a closer look, you see two generations sort of intermingling and eating together and enjoying the market, which is quite an interesting thing, and I think too. So today we saw a number of different alleyways, and I feel that after seeing so many different varieties, that there's sort of a life cycle to each alleyway. They're birthed when there is a purpose for them and when people need a market or something like that, and then after they've served their purpose, they sort of fade away into history. Now with alleyways like this, where they're getting a second chance in life, I feel that more of the older alleyways deserve a second chance here.
지우면 되지 않니 걱정하지는 마 좀 서투르면 어때 너의 모습 아름답기만 한 것 우리에게 주어진 하루라는 시간
It's almost like stepping back in time and experiencing the history of this area, but ultimately it comes with sort of a melancholy feeling because I know that in the future some of these areas may disappear unless something drastic changes them. It's a good point to learn about the history, but it's also an overall sad feeling.